Hey guys, welcome back to the After Hours. I'm the A-Tail Beast, and today we're going to talk about selective listening in the market. So let's get into it. So winter is here, and the markets are surprisingly stable in late October. Now, what's even more surprising is why are they stable? Now, let me explain. It all started with the UK. The UK is affected by what we call Sunak optimism. Now, there's a lot of optimism about this country's new non-white Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Now, I don't really know anything about him, but I have a hunch that he's going to create some awesome climate change policies. Now, the UK is really motivated, especially after the recent policy crisis from his predecessor, Liz Truss. Now, if we go overseas, we'll see even more people are rotating in office. Psych. President Xi just won the election for his third term. Now, his predecessor, the former president of China, he was recently escorted out of the National Congress Assembly after not feeling well. Now, this is crazy because it goes against China's reputation as being meticulous and detailed, especially when it comes to official meetings. If you have someone being removed from a meeting, that kind of speaks a little more about what's happening in the background. Now, the article says he just went to the next room to take a rest, and now he feels much better. The people, they fear that there might be something going on in the background. Now, if we go over to Sweden and look at the second largest investment bank in Sweden, the Swiss bank Credit Suisse, it just came out with a new plan. Now, this plan just made Credit Suisse the latest meme stock. Overall, it has something to do with the UK optimism. Now, this UK optimism is actually just elections. Now, the elections, it has people at the top rotating or solidifying their spot at the top. Now, you have that in China, you have it in UK, you have it in America. You probably have it somewhere else that I'm not paying attention. But the main thing is this optimism comes from a ray of hope. And today we have a lot of hope. If we look at just the facts, there's all kinds of reasons to be down. But who looks at facts anyway? Most people don't even read. Now, back to the optimism. Now, this optimism is so contagious that everyone is just ignoring the facts. And the facts are, we're in a bear market, and this is a bear market rally. And when it comes to the history of bear market rallies, they're usually short-lived. Now, what's different now is if you look at the central banks who have the mandate for price stability and full employment, they're actually starting to switch up the narrative. Surprise. Now, the reason they're doing this is because on a global scale, we know the world economy is connected, even if we're trying to kick out some countries. But for the most part, what happens in one side of the scale affects the other side of the scale. Now, the global central banks are calling peak inflation. They're saying the worst is behind us. Stop fucking lying. And maybe it's time for us to start slowing hikes so we can get closer to price stability. Now, the Fed, they're the ones that spearhead what's happening in most of this. And there's been a lot of talk in the past few weeks that there's going to be a Fed pivot. The Fed is trying to change the definition again. They're saying instead of cutting rate hikes, how about we slow rate hikes or pause rate hikes? Now, everyone else is laser focused on energy policies, war, politics, holidays, and probably some other thing. If we look at the economic growth in the US, we'll see that they're having their third earnings right now. This is the perfect opportunity to find out the facts. Where are we and where are we going? Now, if we look at past economic growth, we can see that most of the growth came from the tech and the energy sector. And when we look at a sector, usually we look at the top companies in that sector to represent growth in the sector. And right now we see Meta, which is in the same sector as Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and a few other big names in tech. Now, Meta was created by Mark Zuckerberg, who has a parent company called Facebook. So in the recent third quarter earnings, Meta just had a poor performance for the entire sector. Now, the metaverse had a lot of support. Optimistic investors like Jim Cramer, most of the Wall Street, and probably people from the deep state oligarchy, and who else knows. But over time, after the tech bubble popped, all those supporters are starting to switch sides. The idea is starting to lose credibility. Even Jim Cramer, who was a well-known fan of the Meta, just 3 days later, you see him online crying and apologizing for advising others to invest in Meta. Now, we all know what's going on. Everyone is being laid off. Inflation is still high, but we do have some optimistic signs. And one of those optimistic signs, even with the poor performance in earnings from most people, is Apple. Apple came in and saved the economy from falling off the cliff. It's been famously quoted by Warren Buffett as too big to fail. They're saying in inflation environments, all the Apple needs to do is just raise their prices. And that's exactly what they did. They're There's no way that Apple is ever going to come out with a bad earnings when it doesn't need to come out with a bad earnings, which means we'll never fall off the cliff because we always have Apple to save us. And the Fed might be using this idea to start an actual pivot. Now that's if we look at this from a light perspective. Apple is too big to fail. They can always raise their prices. They'll never have a bad earnings, even in inflation environments. But in the worst case scenario, we might be looking at a future pink sheet, but that's probably not likely. Now, all these events are kind of crazy. I feel like they're going to cause some kind of backup, and that's going to create a potential energy that's going to explode. In the meantime, this volatility is untradeable, so I'm going to sit on my hands and wait for better times, and then I'll get back to trading. In the meantime, if you like what you saw, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.